The slap echoed through Romano's seafood house like a gunshot, silencing every conversation at every table. My cheek burned, but not as much as my pride as I stared at my wife, Lauren, her manicured hand still raised, her face twisted with alcohol-fueled rage and contempt. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "You're pathetic, Ethan," she hissed, loud enough for her real estate friends to hear every word. "Sitting there with your grease-stained fingers, making jokes while successful people are talking. When are you going to grow up and be a real man?" The silence stretched like a taut wire. 23 people watched me. Lauren's colleagues, their spouses, the waitstaff frozen mid-service. I could feel their eyes boring into me, some shocked, others secretly delighted by the drama unfolding at table 12. I touched my cheek slowly, feeling the heat radiating from where her palm had connected. Lauren's birthday dinner, the one I'd worked double shifts to afford, had just become my public execution. "Well," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the hurricane building inside my chest. "I guess that answers that question." I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the continued silence. Lauren's eyes widened slightly. She'd expected me to fight back, to give her ammunition for whatever narrative she'd already constructed in her head. Instead, I pulled out my wallet, counted out enough cash to cover our meals plus a generous tip for the poor waitress who'd witnessed this spectacle, and placed it neatly beside my untouched lobster. "Happy birthday, Lauren," I said, looking directly into her eyes. "I hope you get everything you deserve." I walked out of Romano's with my spine straight and my head high, but inside, something fundamental had broken. Not my heart, that had been cracking for months. No, what broke was my willingness to pretend our marriage was worth saving. The drive home took 15 minutes through the winding streets of Millbrook, our picture-perfect New England town where everyone knew everyone else's business by breakfast. By tomorrow morning, half the town would know that Lauren Cole had slapped her husband at her own birthday party. By noon, they'd know why. Our house sat at the end of Maple Street, a modest colonial with blue shutters that Lauren had always complained was too small for entertaining. I pulled into the driveway and sat in my truck for a moment, looking at the windows glowing warm and yellow. In a few hours, Lauren would stumble through that front door, probably with her sister Rebecca in tow, ready to justify what she'd done. I wouldn't be here to listen. Inside, I moved with mechanical precision. Clothes into a duffel bag. Important documents from the home office. The photo of my late father from my nightstand, the only family picture Lauren hadn't redecorated out of existence. My phone buzzed constantly. Text after text from Lauren. "Where did you go? You embarrassed me by leaving. Come back right now. I was drunk. You know I didn't mean it. Ethan, answer me." I turned the phone off and finished packing. The last thing I took was the spare key to my garage, not the attached one where Lauren parked her BMW, but my real garage, the one I rented across town where I restored classic cars on weekends. She'd never understood why I needed that space, why I spent my free time with old junk when I could be networking at country club events or real estate mixers. Tonight, that garage would become my temporary home. Tomorrow, it would become the foundation of my new life. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter, right next to the bills Lauren never bothered to look at, the ones that showed exactly how much debt her successful lifestyle had accumulated. Let her figure out how to pay for the BMW lease and the designer clothes and the weekly salon appointments on her realtor commissions. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw Mrs. Griggs peeking through her curtains next door. The old woman had been our neighbor for 8 years, watching our marriage deteriorate with the keen interest of someone whose own entertainment options were limited to soap operas and local drama. She'd have plenty to talk about tomorrow. I drove through downtown Millbrook, past the Union Jack bar where my foster sister Paige worked nights, past the movie theater where Lauren and I had our first date, past all the landmarks of a life I was leaving behind. At the storage garage, I sat in the silence for a long time, surrounded by the cars I'd been restoring. A 1967 Mustang, a 1970 Chevelle, a 1963 Corvette. These machines made sense to me in ways people never had. Fix the engine, replace the transmission, restore the paint, and you had something beautiful and functional. People were messier. People like Lauren were broken in ways that couldn't be repaired with tools and patience. I pulled out a notebook and began making lists. Bank accounts to separate, credit cards to cancel, lawyers to call. The practical steps of dismantling a marriage felt surprisingly similar to dismantling an engine. You had to be methodical, careful, and you had to know which parts were worth saving. By 3 a.m., I had a plan. Not just for the divorce, but for something bigger. something that would ensure Lauren Cole learned exactly what it meant to underestimate Ethan Cole. That was the night everything changed. That was the night I stopped being the man who took whatever Lauren dished out and started becoming the man who would serve it right back to her. The slap had awakened something in me that I'd kept buried for years under layers of compromise and conflict avoidance. Lauren wanted a real man? She was about to find out what one looked like when he stopped playing nice. I fell asleep in the back office of my garage, surrounded by car manuals and restoration guides, planning the most important project of my life, the complete and total undoing of my wife's carefully constructed world. 4 years later, I drove back into Millbrook in a midnight black Porsche 911 Turbo, custom-built in my shop outside Boston. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was returning to the town that had witnessed my humiliation in a car worth more than most people's houses. The Ethan Cole who'd left Millbrook had been a small-town mechanic with grease under his fingernails and a wife who was ashamed of him. The man driving down Main Street now owned 3 luxury auto restoration shops, employed 47 people, and had a net worth that would make Lauren's real estate friends weep with envy. But I wasn't here for a victory lap. I was here for something much more satisfying. I parked outside the Union Jack bar, the same dive where Paige had been slinging drinks since high school. The neon sign flickered the same way it had when I was 25, and through the windows, I could see the same crowd of locals nursing the same complaints about their lives. Paige looked up when I walked in, and her face went through a series of expressions. Confusion, recognition, then pure delight. "Holy shit," she said, loud enough for half the bar to hear. "Ethan Cole, is that really you?" "Hello, Paige." I slid onto a bar stool and grinned at my foster sister. "You look exactly the same." "And you look like you robbed a bank." She poured me a whiskey without asking what I wanted. "What the hell happened to you? Last I heard, you disappeared after Lauren's birthday disaster and nobody knew where you went." "I got tired of being small," I said, taking a sip. The whiskey was bottom shelf, but it tasted like home. "So I decided to get big." Paige leaned against the bar, studying my face. We'd grown up together in the same foster home until I aged out at 18, and she could read me better than anyone alive. "You're here about her, aren't you?" she said quietly. "What makes you say that?" "Because you've got that look. The same one you had when Tommy Morrison kept picking on you in high school right before you put him in the hospital." I smiled. Paige remembered everything. "Tell me about Lauren." "Oh, honey." Paige's grin was wicked. "You are going to love this story." She poured herself a shot and settled in. The bar was busy enough that no one paid attention to our conversation, but I noticed several people stealing glances at me. Word was already spreading that Ethan Cole was back in town. "So, after you left," Paige began, "Lauren went completely off the rails. Started hitting the clubs in Hartford, spending money like she was printing it in your basement. She hooked up with this personal trainer named Trevor Lane, young, stupid, built like a Greek god, and about as smart as a bag of hammers. Sounds like her type. Oh, it gets better. Trevor convinced her to invest in his fitness empire. Some bullshit scheme involving protein supplements and online coaching. She liquidated everything she could get her hands on, sold the furniture, cashed out her retirement, even took a second mortgage on the house. I felt a warm glow in my chest. "Please tell me this story has a happy ending." "For you?" "Absolutely. Trevor disappeared about 6 months ago with every penny she had, plus whatever he could steal from her clients. Turns out he was running the same scam in 3 different states. Lauren lost everything. The house, the car, the business. She's working checkout at Millbrook Market now, living in that shitty apartment above Chen's grocery store. The irony was beautiful. While I'd been building an empire, Lauren had been destroying herself with the same greed and poor judgment that had poisoned our marriage. And the best part, Paige continued, is that everyone in town knows exactly what happened. She went from queen bee to town joke in about 18 months. Nobody trusts her, nobody wants to be around her, and she spends most nights in here drinking cheap wine and complaining about how unfair her life is. She comes here? Tuesday and Thursday nights, regular as clockwork. Sits at the end of the bar, gets drunk, and tells anyone who'll listen about how her bastard ex-husband abandoned her in her time of need. I checked my watch. Thursday, 8:47 p.m. "She should be here soon," Paige said, following my gaze. "You want to stick around for the show?" I wouldn't miss it. Paige moved down the bar to serve other customers, but I could see her excitement. She'd always been protective of me, and Lauren's public humiliation of her foster brother had made an enemy for life. At 9:15, the door opened and Lauren Cole walked into the Union Jack. I almost didn't recognize her. The woman who'd slapped me at Romano's had been polished and predatory, every hair in place, every outfit calculated to impress. This version of Lauren looked like she'd been through a blender. Her hair was stringy and unwashed, her clothes were discount store casual, and she moved with the defeated shuffle of someone who'd given up on life. She took her usual seat at the end of the bar without looking around, and Paige poured her a glass of house white wine without being asked. "Rough day?" Paige asked with fake sympathy. "They're all rough days," Lauren muttered. "Got written up again for being late. Like it matters. It's not like scanning barcodes requires a Harvard degree." "Maybe things will turn around," Paige said. "You never know what might walk through that door." Lauren snorted. "Nothing good ever walks through doors in this town. Trust me, I've been waiting 4 years for my luck to change." "Funny you should mention that," I said, turning around on my bar stool. "I was just thinking the same thing." Lauren's wineglass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. Her face went white, then red, then white again as she stared at me like I was a ghost. "Ethan," she whispered. "Hello, Lauren." I stood up slowly, enjoying the way her eyes tracked up my expensive suit, the Italian leather shoes, the Rolex that cost more than she made in 6 months. "You look different." The entire bar had gone quiet. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Lauren's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. What are you? How did you?" she stammered. "How did I what? How did I survive without you? How did I manage to build a life that doesn't revolve around your constant criticism and bottomless need for drama?" I smiled pleasantly. It was surprisingly easy, actually. Lauren's shock was giving way to something else. Calculation. I could see her brain working, trying to figure out how to spin this encounter to her advantage. "I've missed you," she said, attempting a smile. "I know things ended badly between us, but I never stopped hoping you'd come home." The lie was so transparent it was almost insulting. But then again, Lauren had never been particularly good at reading people. It's why she'd fallen for Trevor's obvious scam, and why she'd never understood that her constant put-downs were slowly eroding whatever love I'd once felt for her. "Home?" I looked around the bar. "This isn't my home anymore, Lauren. I just came back to take care of some unfinished business." "What kind of business?" I pulled a manila envelope from my jacket and placed it on the bar between us. "The kind that involves lawyers." Lauren stared at the envelope like it might bite her. "What is that?" "Divorce papers. I had them drawn up 3 years ago, but I never got around to serving them. Figured I'd deliver them personally." She opened the envelope with shaking hands and scanned the first page. As she read, her face went through a series of expressions. Confusion, disbelief, then pure terror. "You can't do this," she said. "The house, the joint accounts, you can't just take everything." "I'm not taking anything that was ever really yours," I said calmly. "The house was bought with my credit and my down payment. The joint accounts were funded by my income, the cars, the furniture, the life insurance policies, all mine. You're welcome to keep whatever you actually contributed to our marriage." "Which is what, exactly?" I pretended to think about it. "Well, there's that slap. You can definitely keep that." The bar erupted in snickers and whispered comments. Lauren's humiliation was complete, but I wasn't finished yet. "Oh, and Lauren?" I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "I know about Trevor. I know about the money you stole from the joint accounts to fund his little scam. I know about the credit cards you opened in my name. I know about all of it." Her face went ashen. "Ethan, I can explain." "No need. My lawyers have already handled everything. The debt is in your name now, where it belongs. The credit agencies have been notified, and Trevor, well, let's just say he's discovered that running cons in multiple states is a federal crime." I stood up and dropped a 50 on the bar, more than enough to cover my drinks and Lauren's wine. "It was good seeing you again," I said. "Don't worry about staying in touch. I'll know where to find you if I need anything else." I walked toward the door, but Lauren's voice stopped me. "Ethan, wait." She stumbled off her bar stool, desperation making her clumsy. "Please, I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. I still love you." I turned back to face her, and for a moment, I felt something that might have been pity. Then I remembered the slap, the years of belittlement, the way she'd made me feel small and worthless. "Lauren," I said gently, "you don't love me. You never did. You loved the idea of having someone you could control, someone who'd make you feel superior. But I'm not that person anymore." "I can change," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I know I was terrible to you, but I can be better. I can be the wife you deserved. The wife I deserved wouldn't have slapped me in public. The wife I deserved wouldn't have stolen from me. The wife I deserved wouldn't be standing in a dive bar begging her ex-husband for scraps." I shook my head. "You had your chance, Lauren. You threw it away the night you decided I wasn't good enough for you." I left her standing there, surrounded by the curious stares and whispered comments of people who'd watched her rise and fall. As I reached my car, I could hear her sobbing through the bar's thin walls. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the end of the first act. I spent the night at the Millbrook Inn, the town's only decent hotel, in a suite that cost more per night than Lauren's weekly salary. Through my window, I could see the lights of downtown, including the neon glow of the Union Jack, where I'd left my ex-wife crying into her cheap wine. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from Lauren. The progression was predictable. First came desperate apologies, then angry accusations, then bargaining, then threats. I read them all, but didn't respond. Lauren had always been dramatic, but desperation was making her sloppy. At 7 a.m., I drove to Millbrook Market to see the new Lauren in her natural habitat. The grocery store was exactly as I remembered. Small, outdated, the kind of place that survived because it was convenient, not because it was good. Lauren was at Register 3, scanning items with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd given up on life. She looked worse in the harsh fluorescent lighting, older and more worn down than she'd seemed in the bar's forgiving dimness. I grabbed a basket and walked through the store, picking up random items while I observed. The woman who'd once spent an hour choosing between two nearly identical shades of lipstick was now wearing a faded Millbrook Market polo shirt and jeans that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wasn't wearing makeup. When I reached her register, she looked up automatically to greet the next customer, and her professional smile faded on her lips. "Ethan," she breathed. "Good morning, Lauren. Working hard, I see." She glanced nervously at her manager's office, then back at me. "What do you want?" "Just picking up a few things." I placed my items on the conveyor belt. Expensive imported cheese, a bottle of wine that cost more than her hourly wage, some gourmet crackers. Nice to see you found steady employment." Lauren scanned my items in silence, her hands shaking slightly. When she reached the wine, she paused. "This costs $60, she said. "I know, I can afford it." The simple statement hit her like a physical blow. 4 years ago, $60 for a bottle of wine would have been a major expense for us, something we'd have to budget for and justify. Now it was pocket change. "Your total is $87.43, she said quietly. I handed her a $100 bill. "Keep the change." "I can't." "Of course you can. Consider it a tip for excellent service." Lauren's eyes filled with tears, but she took the money. Behind me, other customers were getting impatient, and her manager was starting to look in our direction. "I need to talk to you," she said urgently. "After work, please." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Ethan, please. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I pretended to consider it. "Fine. 5 minutes. I'll meet you at Romano's at 6. Her face crumpled. Romano's. The scene of our final humiliation as a married couple. "That's cruel," she whispered. "No," I said, picking up my bags. "Cruel was slapping me in front of 20 people because you were embarrassed to be married to me. This is just ironic." I left her standing at the register, trying not to cry in front of her customers and her boss. The day was off to a perfect start. At Romano's, I requested the same table where Lauren had slapped me 4 years earlier. The hostess, a young woman who probably didn't remember the original incident, seated me with a smile. I ordered a scotch and waited. Lauren arrived at exactly 6 o'clock, having changed out of her work uniform into a dress that had probably been expensive once, but now looked tired and dated. She'd attempted to fix her hair and makeup, but the effort only highlighted how far she'd fallen. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. 5 minutes, I reminded her, checking my watch. "Starting now." "Ethan, I know you hate me. I know I destroyed our marriage and hurt you in ways I can't take back. But I'm begging you, please don't take the house." "The house that's already been sold?" Her face went white. "What?" "I put it on the market this morning. Cash sale, closes in 2 weeks. I got a very good price. The market's been strong lately." "But where am I supposed to live?" "I hear there are some nice apartments in Hartford. Reasonable rent, good bus service for people without cars." "You're taking my car too?" "Lauren, it was never your car. It was leased in my name, paid for with my money, insured under my policy, just like everything else in your life." I leaned back in my chair. "You spent our entire marriage telling me I wasn't successful enough, wasn't ambitious enough, wasn't man enough. Well, congratulations. You're about to find out what life looks like when you don't have a man propping up your lifestyle." She was crying now, not caring who saw. "I was wrong about everything. I see that now. You were always enough. More than enough. I was just too stupid and selfish to appreciate what I had." "Yes, you were. Can't we try again? I know it would take time to rebuild trust, but..." Lauren, I interrupted her gently. Look around. Do you see this restaurant? These people? This is the place where you decided our marriage was over. You made that choice, not me. I'm just finally accepting it. But you loved me once. I did. And you ruined that love as surely as if you'd put a gun to its head. Every criticism, every put down, every time you made me feel small and worthless, you were murdering what we had together. The slap was just the funeral. She reached across the table, trying to take my hand, but I pulled away. Your 5 minutes are up, I said, standing. Ethan, wait. Goodbye, Lauren. Try not to make the same mistakes with the next man stupid enough to fall for your act. I left her sitting there, just as I had 4 years earlier. But this time, I wasn't running away. I was walking toward something better. Outside, I called Paige. How'd it go? She asked. Phase 1 is complete. She knows about the house and the car. By tomorrow, she'll know about the rest. And Phase 2? Phase 2 starts when Trevor comes looking for me. What makes you think he will? Because desperate people do desperate things. And Lauren's going to tell him exactly who's responsible for ruining their little scam. I was right. Trevor Lane showed up at my hotel at 9:30 that night, pounding on my door like he was trying to break it down. I opened it calmly, unsurprised to see Lauren's former lover standing in the hallway. He was exactly as Paige had described, young, muscular, and radiating the kind of aggressive stupidity that attractive people often mistake for confidence. You snake, he snarled, pushing past me into the room. You think you can destroy people's lives and just walk away? I think I can reclaim what was stolen from me and face whatever consequences follow, I said, closing the door. But thank you for coming. This saves me the trouble of tracking you down. Trevor was pacing like a caged animal, his hands clenched into fists. Lauren told me what you did. Taking her house, her car, ruining her credit. That's cold, man. Even for an ex-husband. What's cold is stealing $50,000 from joint accounts to fund your protein powder pyramid scheme. What's cold is opening credit cards in my name to finance your lifestyle. What's cold is seducing a married woman and then abandoning her when the money ran out. That's business. No, Trevor, that's fraud, and theft, and conspiracy. The FBI tends to take those crimes seriously, especially when they cross state lines. The color drained from his face. You can't prove anything. I can prove everything. Bank records, credit applications, witness statements from your other victims in Connecticut and Rhode Island. Did you really think you could run the same scam in multiple states without anyone noticing the pattern? Trevor stopped pacing. What do you want? I want you to disappear. Tonight. Leave Millbrook, leave Connecticut, and don't come back. Ever. And if I don't? I walked to the hotel room desk and picked up a manila folder. Then tomorrow morning, I hand this file over to Detective Barnes at the Millbrook Police Department, and she forwards it to the appropriate federal authorities. You'll be in custody by noon. Trevor grabbed the folder and flipped through it. As he read, his bravado evaporated. The file contained everything. Bank statements, credit reports, sworn affidavits from his victims, even security camera footage from the gym where he'd recruited most of his marks. How did you get all this? He asked weakly. I'm a very wealthy man with very expensive lawyers and very thorough private investigators. When you steal from me, I don't get mad. I get even. He closed the folder and looked at me with something approaching respect. You're not what I expected. No one ever expects the mechanic to fight back. That's always been my advantage. Trevor set the folder on the desk. If I leave tonight, this goes away? This copy goes away. But if you ever come back, if you ever contact Lauren again, if you ever run another scam anywhere in New England, the other copies get distributed to every law enforcement agency from here to Miami. Are we clear? Crystal. He headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Lauren really did love you. She talked about you all the time, about how she'd screwed up the best thing in her life. If that were true, she wouldn't have stolen from me to fund your business venture. Trevor shrugged. People do stupid things when they're desperate. She thought if she could help me succeed, she could prove she wasn't the failure you made her feel like. I never made Lauren feel like anything. She did that all by herself. After he left, I poured myself a drink and stood at the window, looking out at the lights of Millbrook. Tomorrow, Lauren would wake up to discover that Trevor was gone. Her last hope of escaping the consequences of her choices vanished in the night. But I wasn't finished with her yet, not even close. The next morning, I drove to the offices of Millbrook Realty, where Lauren had worked before her world collapsed. The agency occupied a converted Victorian house on Main Street, all brass fixtures and fake colonial charm designed to appeal to city people looking for small-town authenticity. Rebecca Martinez, the agency's owner, greeted me with the kind of enthusiasm reserved for potential clients who drove expensive cars. Mr. Cole, what a pleasure to meet you. I understand you're interested in some of our premium properties. Actually, I'm here about Lauren Cole. Rebecca's smile faltered slightly. Oh, Lauren doesn't work here anymore. Well, there were some professional difficulties. I know, I'm the ex-husband she stole from to fund those difficulties. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Rebecca glanced nervously at her assistant, who was pretending not to listen while obviously hanging on every word. I see. Well, I want you to know that as soon as we discovered what had happened, we terminated her employment immediately. Millbrook Realty has zero tolerance for... I'm not here to cause trouble for you, I interrupted. I'm here to make sure everyone in Lauren's professional network understands exactly what kind of person they're dealing with. I spent the next hour visiting every real estate office, insurance agency, and professional service business in Millbrook. At each stop, I introduced myself politely, explained my connection to Lauren, and provided a carefully edited summary of her recent activities. I didn't lie or exaggerate. I didn't need to. The truth was damaging enough. By noon, word had spread through Millbrook's business community like wildfire. Lauren Cole was not to be trusted with money, clients, or confidential information. She was a liability, a cautionary tale, a professional pariah. My next stop was the Millbrook Country Club, where Lauren had once networked with the town's social elite. I'd never been a member. The initiation fee had been beyond our means when we were married, but money had a way of opening doors that had previously been closed. Mr. Cole, the club manager said, practically bowing as he showed me to the dining room, we're so honored to have you consider membership. Your business success has been quite the topic of conversation. I'm sure it has. Tell me, is the membership committee meeting today? As a matter of fact, yes. We're reviewing several applications for the fall social season. Excellent. I'd like to address them, if possible. I have some information that might be relevant to their decisions. 20 minutes later, I stood before Millbrook's social gatekeepers, 12 of the town's most influential residents, the people who decided who was in and who was out of polite society. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, some of you may remember me as Lauren Cole's ex-husband. 4 years ago, I was a small-town mechanic who wasn't good enough for your social circle. Today, I'm a successful businessman with a net worth that exceeds most of your annual incomes combined. The room was silent. These people weren't used to being addressed so directly. I'm not here to join your club. I don't need your approval or your social connections. I'm here to tell you about Lauren Cole, who I believe has applied for membership reinstatement. I proceeded to detail Lauren's recent activities: the theft, the fraud, the professional misconduct, the association with a known criminal. I presented bank statements, legal documents, and sworn affidavits. By the time I finished, several committee members looked physically ill. Any questions? I asked. Margaret Whitman, the committee chairwoman, cleared her throat. Mr. Cole, this is quite disturbing. We had no idea. Of course you didn't. Lauren has always been very good at presenting a false image, but I thought you should know who you're really dealing with before you make any decisions about her future here. I left the country club knowing that Lauren's social rehabilitation was now impossible. The people she'd once aspired to impress would never accept her back into their circle. But I wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. That afternoon, I visited Millbrook Market and had a quiet conversation with the store manager, a nervous man named Gary who clearly recognized me from the morning's gossip circuit. Mr. Cole, I want you to know that we had no idea about Mrs. Cole's background when we hired her. I'm sure you didn't, but now that you do know, I thought you might want to reconsider her employment. Well, she's been a reliable employee. I placed a folder on his desk. These are copies of the police reports filed in 3 different states regarding her association with Trevor Lane's fraudulent business activities. I'm not saying she's going to steal from you, but I thought you should be aware of her history with other people's money. Gary opened the folder and scanned the first page. His face went pale. We'll have to review this with our corporate office. Of course, take your time. I'm sure you'll make the right decision. I left Gary staring at the documents, knowing that Lauren's employment was now hanging by a thread. My final stop of the day was the Union Jack, where Paige was setting up for the evening shift. You've been busy, she said, grinning. The whole town's talking about Lauren's dramatic fall from grace. Again. The day's not over yet. What else could you possibly do to her? I pulled out my phone and showed her a social media profile I'd created that morning. It was tasteful, professional, and completely factual. It detailed Lauren's theft, fraud, and association with Trevor Lane. It included public records, court documents, and news articles about Trevor's arrest in Rhode Island. You're putting her on blast online? I'm making sure that anyone who searches her name gets the full story, Potential employers, landlords, dates. They'll all know exactly who Lauren Cole really is. Paige whistled low. That's brutal, man, and brilliant. She spent 4 years telling everyone in town that I was a loser who abandoned her. Now they'll know the truth. As if summoned by our conversation, Lauren walked through the bar's front door. She looked worse than she had that morning, hollow-eyed, desperate, defeated. She'd obviously heard about my visits around town. She spotted me immediately and walked over to our table, her movements stiff with barely controlled rage. "You bastard," she said quietly. "You vindictive, cruel bastard." "Hello, Lauren. Rough day?" "You know exactly what kind of day I've had. Gary fired me an hour ago. The country club called to inform me that my membership application has been rejected, and someone's been spreading lies about me all over the internet. Not lies, facts. There's a difference. You're destroying my life." "I'm not destroying anything. I'm just making sure people know who you really are instead of who you pretend to be." Lauren sank into the empty chair at our table, all the fight going out of her at once. "What do you want from me, Ethan? What will it take to make you stop?" "I want you to understand what it feels like to lose everything because someone you trusted decided you weren't worth basic human decency. I know I hurt you." "You didn't just hurt me, Lauren. You humiliated me. You stole from me. You tried to destroy my reputation and my self-worth. And then you expected me to just disappear quietly so you could move on with your life. So this is revenge? This is justice. There's a difference." Lauren looked around the bar, at the faces of people she'd known her whole life, people who were now watching her public breakdown with a mixture of pity and schadenfreude. "I can't stay in this town," she said finally. "Not after what you've done. That's probably for the best. Where am I supposed to go? I have no money, no job, no references. I hear there are opportunities in other cities for people willing to start over. Of course, you'll have to be honest about your background. Most employers do background checks these days." Lauren stood up slowly, her face a mask of defeat and hatred. "I hope you're satisfied." "Not yet," I said, "but I'm getting there." She walked away without another word, and I watched her go with a sense of completion. Phase 2 was finished. Lauren Cole's life in Millbrook was effectively over, but I still had one more surprise for her. 3 days later, Lauren was gone. She'd packed whatever belongings she could fit in a single suitcase and left town on a Greyhound bus, destination unknown. Mrs. Griggs had watched from her window as Lauren walked to the bus station, and by evening, the whole town knew that the Lauren Cole saga had reached its conclusion, but I knew better. Lauren was many things, selfish, dishonest, manipulative, but she wasn't a quitter. She'd be back, probably with some half-baked plan to salvage her reputation or extract some final measure of revenge. I was right. She returned on a Friday night 2 weeks later, driving a beat-up Honda with Massachusetts plates. She'd obviously found some kind of work in Boston or Springfield, enough to afford a cheap car and a tank of gas for the trip back to Millbrook. Paige called me as soon as Lauren walked into the Union Jack. "She's here," Paige said, "and she looks different, angrier, more focused." "I'll be right there." I found Lauren sitting at the bar, nursing a beer and staring at her reflection in the mirror behind the bottles. She'd lost weight, and her hair was shorter, more severe. She looked harder, more dangerous than the broken woman who'd left town. "Hello, Lauren." She turned to face me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Pure, concentrated hatred. "Ethan, I was wondering when you'd show up. I hear you've been traveling. How was Boston?" "Educational. I learned a lot about myself, about what I'm capable of when I stop feeling sorry for myself and start fighting back." I slid onto the bar stool next to her. "Sounds ominous." "Do you know what it's like to apply for jobs when every Google search of your name brings up articles about fraud and theft? Do you know what it's like to be turned down for apartments because landlords think you're a criminal?" "I imagine it's unpleasant." "Unpleasant," she laughed bitterly. "That's one word for it. I spent 2 weeks sleeping in my car before I found someone desperate enough to hire me, cleaning office buildings at night for minimum wage, paying cash for a room in a boarding house full of drug addicts and prostitutes." "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not. You're thrilled. This is exactly what you wanted." She was right, of course. Her suffering was precisely what I'd intended to achieve. But hearing her describe it in detail, I felt something unexpected. Not guilt, exactly, but a kind of hollow satisfaction that wasn't as sweet as I'd anticipated. "What do you want, Lauren?" "I want to make a deal." "I'm listening." "I'll disappear. Permanently. I'll move to California, change my name, start over completely. You'll never see me or hear from me again." "In exchange for what?" "You remove the online posts about me. You call off your private investigators. You let me rebuild my life somewhere else without your interference." I considered her offer. It was reasonable, even generous. I'd accomplished everything I'd set out to do. Lauren had lost her home, her job, her social standing, her sense of security. She'd learned what it felt like to be powerless and alone. And if I refuse? Lauren's smile was cold and sharp. Then I stop playing defense and start playing offense. Meaning? Meaning I know things about you too, Ethan. I know about the cash payments you made to certain city inspectors when you were starting your business. I know about the tax deductions you claimed for personal expenses. I know about the safety violations at your shops that you covered up instead of fixing. Lauren was bluffing. She had to be. But there was something in her voice, a confidence that suggested she'd done her homework. "You're fishing," I said. "Am I? Want to bet your business empire on that?" We stared at each other across the bar. Two people who'd once loved each other now locked in a battle of mutual destruction. "Even if you had evidence of wrongdoing," I said carefully, "using it to blackmail me would be a crime. So would destroying someone's life out of spite. But here we are." Paige appeared at the other end of the bar, pretending to wipe down glasses while obviously listening to our conversation. The rest of the Union Jack's patrons were giving us a wide berth, sensing the tension crackling between us. "What's your timeline?" I asked. 24 hours. Tomorrow night, same time, same place. Give me your answer then." Lauren finished her beer and stood up. "Oh, and Ethan, don't bother having me followed or investigated further. I'm not the same naive woman you married. I've learned how to protect myself." She walked out of the bar, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a growing sense of unease. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. I called my lawyers, my accountants, my private investigators. I had them review every aspect of my business dealings, looking for any vulnerability Lauren might exploit. What they found wasn't illegal, but it wasn't pretty either. Gray area deductions that might not survive an audit, relationships with city officials that could be mischaracterized as bribery, safety incidents that had been resolved quietly instead of reported officially. None of it would destroy me, but all of it could damage my reputation and cost me millions in legal fees, fines, and lost business. Lauren had clearly done her homework during her 2 weeks in exile. The next night, I arrived at the Union Jack early and claimed a corner table where we could talk privately. Lauren showed up precisely on time, looking calm and confident. "Well," she said, sitting down across from me, "I've given your proposal serious consideration. And I'm prepared to accept your terms, with one modification." Lauren raised an eyebrow. "Which is?" "I want a written agreement, signed, notarized, legally binding. You disappear, I remove the online content, and we both agree never to contact each other or interfere in each other's lives again." "Fine." I had my lawyer draw up something similar. She pulled a document from her purse and slid it across the table. "I think you'll find the terms acceptable." I read through the agreement carefully. It was professional, thorough, and exactly what I'd expected. Lauren had clearly found herself a competent attorney. "This works," I said, "but I want to add one more clause." "What?" I pulled out a pen and wrote at the bottom of the document. "Both parties acknowledge that this agreement resolves all outstanding disputes and grievances related to their marriage, divorce, and subsequent interactions." Lauren read the addition and nodded. "Agreed." We both signed the document, and Lauren produced a notary stamp from her purse. "You're a notary now?" I asked. "Among other things. I've been learning new skills." She notarized both our signatures, then made a copy of the document on her phone. "It's done," she said. "You'll remove the online posts within 48 hours?" "Yes, and you'll be gone by the end of the week?" "I'm driving to Los Angeles tomorrow morning. I've already got a job lined up and an apartment waiting." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of finality settling between us. "For what it's worth," Lauren said, "I am sorry. About the slap, about the stealing, about all of it. I was a terrible wife and an even worse person." "Thank you for saying that. And for what it's worth, you were right. About everything. I was selfish and shallow, and I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was too stupid to appreciate it." I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, exactly, but a kind of release. The anger that had driven me for 4 years was finally beginning to fade. "We both made mistakes," I said. "No, Ethan. You made one mistake, marrying me. Everything else was my fault." Lauren stood up and extended her hand. "Goodbye, Ethan. I hope you find happiness." I shook her hand, surprised by how final it felt. "Goodbye, Lauren. I hope you find peace." She walked out of the Union Jack for the last time, and I watched her go with a mixture of relief and melancholy. Paige appeared at my table a few minutes later with a whiskey I hadn't ordered. So that's it? She asked. It's over? It's over. How do you feel? I considered the question. Empty, satisfied, sad, all at the same time. Any regrets? About the marriage? No. About the revenge? Maybe. It felt necessary at the time, but now you're wondering if it was worth it? Now I'm wondering what I'm supposed to do with the rest of my life. Paige sat down across from me. You could start by figuring out how to be happy instead of just successful. Is there a difference? You tell me. You've got more money than God, and you just destroyed the woman who wronged you. Are you happy? I thought about it. Was I happy? I was successful, wealthy, respected. I'd proven that Lauren had been wrong about me, that I was capable of more than she'd ever imagined. I'd gotten my revenge, and then some. But happy? I wasn't sure I remembered what that felt like. I don't know, I admitted. Then maybe it's time to find out. I finished my whiskey and stood up. Outside, I could see Lauren loading her suitcase into the beat-up Honda. In the morning, she'd be gone forever, and this chapter of my life would finally be closed. But Paige was right. I'd spent 4 years focused on the past, on settling scores and evening accounts. Maybe it was time to start thinking about the future. I walked outside and got into my Porsche. As I drove past Lauren's car, she looked up and our eyes met for a moment. Then she looked away, and I continued driving toward whatever came next. Behind me, the Union Jack's neon sign flickered against the darkness, and I realized that for the first time in 4 years, I had no idea what tomorrow would bring. It was terrifying and liberating at the same time.